Hi everyone, I'm here with my dad. He's actually over in California and I'm living here in Japan. And I decided that I kind of want to do a casual interview with him because he migrated our family all the way from Japan to the States when I was 2 years old and when my brother was 4 months old. And I just wanted to understand the thought process and all of the trials and tribulations that came along with that transition. Here's my dad. Can you just give us a quick overview and like a background of your transition from Japan to the United States?
All right. Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me here. So the quick answer is my background, computer software development. The company I was working at back then, it's a Japanese office, not the US company. And then their headquarters is Silicon Valley. But my country manager gave me an opportunity to move to US headquarters. I always wanted to move to US, so I just grabbed this opportunity to come here.
I know we've had different conversations before, and you had said, I think you told me before that you had in your mind that you were more interested in working in the United States than in Japan from when you were younger.
Yeah, that's true. And most of the software products are developed in Silicon Valley back then, like it's more than 20 years ago. Japanese kind of work norms are a little bit different from what I was expecting. You are supposed to work based on hierarchy, but you cannot disagree with your boss. So basically, what I need to do is just following the instruction coming from my supervisor.
I think things are slowly starting to change, but it's still a big hierarchy. But a lot of people feel like they can't get out, that they're stuck. My next question would be, did you face any opposition with moving to the United States?
Even though I wanted to move to US, this transfer was requested by company. I was telling your mother and my parents, I told everyone that it was requested by company. So I have to follow. That's what I told them. So they couldn't even complain. They couldn't be, they couldn't give me an opposition. But one thing I felt from my father was about to be deployed to World War II. So from his point of view, Americans are enemy. His son is moving to the US. Means he's a little bit kind of concerned.
My next question would be, so when we moved to California, we moved to the San Francisco Bay Area. Mm-hmm. What was the most difficult part about adapting to that new lifestyle?
That's a really good question. You are two, and Kazuma was just born. Your mother and myself is just beginning to build our own family, right? There are so many new things, but those new things was caused by America, or we just started our own family, right? So we are not really sure of which one. Basically, there are a lot of things, a lot of new things we had to go through. It's kind of enjoyable. It's kind of funny. One thing I was surprised is, software companies, all those conversations, terminologies are English. I could communicate in English very well at work. However, once I get out of work, for instance, I went to a restaurant by myself. I couldn't understand what people was talking about. For instance, waitress asked me super salad. And then I thought she said super salad, which is large salad. So I said yes. But she said, which one? We had the difficulty communicating each other out of work.
Just to point out, around how old were you transitioning from Japan to America happened?
I think, around 30.
Around 30? Okay. Yeah. 30 is still young, but...
Still, yeah, compared to where I am.
I'm almost 30. My next question, okay. Did you have any worries about me and Kazuma being raised in an American society?
Based on your personality?
Yeah.
I was more worried if you were to be raised in Japan. Mm-hmm. Japanese society, they are based on their culture, it's very conservative, right? I was kind of struggling with that community when I was in kindergarten or elementary school. In the US, more likely people are looking for differences. You have to have your identity. So I like that kind of feeling. I like that idea.
Yeah.
So I wanted you and Kazuma, both you two, be raised in the United States, so you could have your own identity.
It's hard to develop your own individual identity out here if you've been raised out here for your whole life, basically. Next question that kind of goes along with that. What was the biggest sacrifice that you feel like you made in coming to America?
Actually, I feel like I got more gains. One thing, if I'm trying to be a really good son for my parents, I lost the chance to help them out.
So my dad is an only child. And
yeah.
So he doesn't have any siblings, which meant that when we moved to the States, me and my brother were their only grandchildren, right? So then we were all the way across the world, and their only son was all the way across the world. So that was probably one of the biggest sacrifices to be made. Was it worth it?
Don't know, actually. I feel bad for my mother.
Right? Yeah.
But also my father is staying alone in a nursery home.
That's a difficult one, and I think it's difficult too because being an only child, because all of the pressure is now on one person. Kind of turning the subject around, did you face any racial discrimination when you moved to America?
I couldn't recall any big ones or difficult ones because I'm staying in California and then Bay Area.
Okay, well that's good. Kind of to piggyback off of that question, did you ever worry about me and Kazuma having any kind of racial issues or, discriminated against while we were being grown up?
Probably you're gonna go through some difficulties, but I'm not worried. I want you guys to experience those difficulties as well. Once you understand what's going on, then you're gonna build your own skill to handle it. So wherever, because I want you guys to be international people, international professional. I want you guys to really be educated about how to handle those differences.
I don't know about Kazuma. I didn't go through anything super terrible or big, but it's also something that when you go through that, and then when you get older and when you think back on it, you start to understand that those things can hurt people, and to make sure that you treat everyone with respect, and no matter who they are or where they come from. So this is kind of maybe a difficult question, but what do you feel have been your advantages and disadvantages of being an Asian immigrant in the United States?
Oh, that's another good question.
It's kind of a difficult question, but
yeah, it's a little bit difficult. Many people in the U.S. assume Japanese are very hard workers. The people who I meet first time, they assume that I'm a hard worker too, because they knew I'm from Japan.
Right.
And then they naturally accept me to work together. So that's an advantage. Disadvantage is basically looks like all Asian faces look alike.
Yeah.
And then I was mistaken for other Asian people many times.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
That's a disadvantage. They couldn't really recognize me.
Yeah, that happens. During college, when I moved to San Diego, I put in a number of applications to Jamba Juice and different places, but the two jobs I got right away was Japanese restaurants. And they told me it's because when I sent them the email, my full name was Japanese. I automatically was on the top of their list. One, because it's better to have a authentic Japanese person working at a Japanese restaurant. And, it's better to look Asian. And then the second restaurant I worked at you needed to speak Japanese. That was one of the requirements, they said. So that's definitely an advantage. I think for me, growing up, a disadvantage was Asians have this stigma of being weak. That you can say anything to an Asian person and they won't get upset or mad, or you can push them around. So a lot of times what would make me pretty mad while growing up was seeing people try to, let's say, push you around or push my mom around. A lot of Asians, especially Japanese people, get taken advantage of because they're so nice and passive aggressive. A lot of people think that Asians always have cash on them, a lot of cash on them, so that really? They get targeted.
Yeah, that's actually, I agree, because especially Japanese people, they are not assertive enough to express themselves, right?
Especially people in my generation growing up as like Asian immigrants, I think we all have similar stories when it comes to wanting to make sure that our parents aren't taken advantage of because of language barriers or just like racial stigmas. You made a switch not too long ago from working for a company in Silicon Valley. You were a manager for that company to starting your own business. How was that transition? How did it go? And did you always see yourself as more of a business owner?
I'm not the business person at all. I was trying to be a business owner and then think about only money. However, though, I kind of felt that's not me. I'm not being myself. So I was kind of struggling because every day I woke up and then I have to pretend someone else. I took a lot of trainings and also I met a lot of other business owners. I kind of found that you should be being yourself as much as possible, and then you are moving forward with your objectives, not really money. When I was in a corporate, I was taking leadership over many different cultures, right? 5 or 6 years ago, when we went back to Japan, I felt a big gap between the way they are taking leadership in Japan and then we are supposed to take a leadership in the US, which is almost like an international standard. My kind of objective is trying to shorten the gap. I started doing this coaching service in Japan to become more global leaders. Because I'm turning to a business owner, maybe 99% of my thought is money, how to make money. So that's why I was struggling. But I stayed back and then I started focusing on my objectives. Then things started working. People started trusting me a lot. And then my business is growing. So that's kind of my transition. Even you're a business owner, you have to focus on your objectives and also your goals. It's my kind of a lesson.
I watched and I listened to a lot of business owners and what they did and their stories, and that's exactly the story that they all have. Like they say that like when they first started new business, they were so focused on money and it made them unhappy and it didn't work for them. And the moment that they just kind of went towards what they wanted to do and what they were passionate about, that's when things started to click.
Yeah, you made a very good point. It's passion. Passion is the word that I wanted to say.
Ever since I was little, my dad always told me that don't follow the money. It doesn't matter if it makes a lot of money or not, but you have to really love what you do. You have to be passionate about what you do. So I always appreciate that, and that's kind of the way that I work too. But I just want to ask the question, what is your definition of success?
It's a difficult question, but it's a very good question too. My personal definition is, if you can stay being yourself and if you are satisfied, then I can call it success.
Okay. Yeah. And if you're satisfied with it, if you're happy with it, then it's success.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Kind of gonna switch the topic. I think this is the last question. We'll see. So Devon is Black, and you now have a grandson who's almost 1, who is half Black, my son. Do you have any worries about him being raised in Japan? Or do you have any worries about him being raised in America, especially with everything going on right now with police brutality and racial discrimination towards Black people?
I have a thought on this. It's kind of sensitive topic. There are always bias. So for instance, if you take Prince to a park, then people think the Prince is either Japanese or mixed, right? However, if Devon takes him to the park, people definitely think that he is Black. People are not really looking at Prince, like whole circumstance here. So that's called bias, right? Instead of trying to get rid of biases, people need to be educated in a way. They need to adjust their behavior based on the fact you have a bias on everything. So from my point of view, education is important key for all of us to be fair. And then it's a good thing for Prince to be raised in 2 different cultures and societies. So he can be educated very well by experiencing those biases. So later he can build a skill to handle them, and then will treat other people very well. But definitely he will go through challenges and difficulties no matter where he is raised. So we as a family should be able to help him. In this case, only my tiny bit concern is if we have enough skills and strength to support him.
Me and Devon have our own concerns because he's our son, but as grandparents, I wasn't sure what your thoughts were. I have a lot of hope for a lot of change. Japan is a very homogenous country. I've heard little kids call someone who has darker skin burnt.
Well, depending on the society you are going, it's a circumstances a little bit different. He cannot change his situation. Then he needs to recognize it. He needs to recognize circumstance too. Then he needs to build the skill. From my point of view, in Japan, those kind of discrimination or bias is not showing up. It's actually they are talking behind your back. It's very kind of frustrating if he were to stay in Japan for a long time.
My plan is to not raise him in Japan for too long. You know, once he needs to start school, I would like him to be in the United States and grow up in the United States. That's just my preference. My main thing is I want him to build his own individuality and go through the same types of like trials and tribulations that make him into the person that he is when he grows up. And I think the United States is a better place to do that than Japan. Yeah, so that was, I think, my last question, and I kind of want to end this off. Now you've started your business and you're kind of doing the global leadership with different companies. Let us know where we can find you. Do you have a website, on social media? And I'll also link everything down below in the comments as well.
The name of the YouTube is Japan GTP. So if you could query by Japan GTP, then you can hit my YouTube channel. On the YouTube channel, I'm actually putting a lot of movies up there to promote and also talking about my experience as well as my service. There I have a website as well. It's www.localcarrier.net.
Okay, awesome. So I'll link all of that in the description below. Thank you so much. This was something that I actually wanted to do because I've spoken to my grandparents, and I'm actually someone who's super interested in the history of my family. So I wish I knew a little bit more about what my grandparents went through, what their transitions were, how they were feeling at the time. So I actually wanted to create this video and do this like little interview just so I can have my dad's experiences. Auntie Prince can watch them if he ever wanted to when he grows up. And I think it's pretty cool to have that up. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Sure, no problem. Thanks for having me again.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.